The utensil in Emma Calder's hand remained suspended over the seared salmon, perfectly still, as her husband delivered the sentence that would dismantle her entire existence. It takes nearly a decade to build a life, brick by brick, laying a foundation of trust and shared history. Yet it takes less than 10 seconds for one person to light a match, toss it onto the structure, and watch the entire thing burn to the ground while ordering another glass of wine. The restaurant in London continued its ambient motion around them. Crystal acted as percussion against silver at neighboring tables. Somewhere to the left, a woman laughed, oblivious to the detonation occurring at table 4. The pianist in the corner played a melody that was soft and unobtrusive, a stark contrast to the violence of the moment. Across the table sat James Whitmore, Emma's husband of 8 years, observing her with an expression she had never witnessed before. It was a mixture of anticipation and something darker. Satisfaction, perhaps. He looked like a man who had finally summoned the courage to execute a maneuver he had been rehearsing in front of a mirror for weeks. Emma set down her utensil with deliberate care. The silver made a muted contact sound against the white porcelain. She reached for her water glass, took a measured sip, and met his eyes. She remained silent. James's confident mask wavered. He was wearing his best navy suit, the Emma had purchased for his promotion 2 years prior. His hair was freshly cut, his beard trimmed with precision. This was not a spontaneous confession born of guilt. This was staged. This was choreographed. He leaned forward, asking if she had heard him. He repeated the statement. He was in love with someone else. He wanted a dissolution of their marriage. Emma took another sip of water. Her heart hammered against her ribs, restricting her airway, but her hand remained firm. 8 years of marriage. 8 years of constructing a life together, or so she had believed. As an architect, she had poured her soul into creating their physical space.
Every corner of their home held a memory. Every room narrated a story of them. But looking at him now, it became clear there was no them anymore. Perhaps there had not been for quite some time. James pressed for a reaction. His voice carried a sharp edge now. This was not unfolding according to his script. Emma picked up her knife and cut into the salmon. The flesh separated easily, pink and flawless. She took a bite. It was exceptional. The chef had excelled with the herb butter. James's voice rose in pitch. He asked what she was doing. The couple at the adjacent table glanced over. Emma chewed slowly, swallowed, and dabbed her lips with the cloth napkin. Only then did she speak, complimenting the meal. James's face cycled through several expressions: confusion, followed by frustration, and finally something resembling panic. He demanded to know why she was not asking questions, why she was not upset. Emma asked calmly if she should be. She cut another piece of salmon. James recoiled into his chair, looking utterly thrown. In all his planning, in all his mental rehearsals of this evening, he had anticipated tears. He had expected her to beg, to ask why, to plead for another chance, to cause a public disturbance. He had likely imagined himself as the strong one, the decisive protagonist finally brave enough to pursue his own happiness. He had never calculated for silence. He tried again to provoke her. He told her he had been seeing the other woman for 6 months. He claimed she made him happy in ways Emma never had. Emma took a sip of wine. It was a crisp Chardonnay with notes of apple. She asked who chose the restaurant. Was it him, or did the new woman help pick the location? James clutched his jaw. He accused her of focusing on irrelevant details. Emma corrected him. She was analyzing the staging, a public place, upscale but not exclusive, romantic lighting, yet enough witnesses to ensure she would not cause a scene. It was a strategic choice.
He stared at her as if she were a stranger. He called her insane. Perhaps she agreed, or perhaps she simply refused to perform on command. She recalled the first time James had taken her to a fine dining establishment. They had been dating for 3 months. He had been nervous, endearing, speaking too rapidly about his day at the marketing firm. He had knocked over his water glass, and they had both laughed. That James seemed like a different entity entirely. The past year had been peculiar. He had been distant, working late, always guarding his phone. Emma had attributed it to professional stress. His company had been undergoing restructuring. She had given him space, focusing on her own career. Her architecture firm in London was thriving. She had secured 3 major residential projects and 2 commercial ones. She had been busy, fulfilled, and ultimately blind. James continued, determined to extract a reaction. He offered details. Her name was Sophie Langley. She was 28. She worked at his office. She was ambitious and exciting. She looked at him like he mattered. Emma asked, still calm, if she made him feel like he didn't matter. He lashed out, claiming she looked at him like he was furniture, like he was merely part of the background of her perfect life. Emma considered this. Maybe he was right. Maybe she had taken him for granted. Maybe she had been so focused on building their future that she had neglected the present. But that did not excuse his actions. She confirmed his desire for a divorce. It wasn't a question. He agreed, his eyes widening as she accepted it without a fight. He ran a hand through his hair, disrupting the careful styling. He reminded her that this was 8 years of marriage they were discussing. She finished the last of her salmon and set down her silverware. She asked if he was paying for dinner or if they should split the bill. James's face flushed a deep crimson. He called her ridiculous. She countered that she was being practical. She retrieved her phone from her purse. She assumed he had already consulted a legal representative. He did not answer, which was confirmation enough. She opened her banking application. For the first time that evening, her hands trembled. She forced them to remain still. Their joint account showed normal activity from the previous week, but their savings account, the one they had been building for years, was significantly lower than she recalled. She spoke his name. Her voice remained level, but the tone made him straighten his posture. She demanded to know the location of the money from their savings. He had the decency to look uncomfortable. He claimed he had moved some assets to protect them from her. Emma noted the irony. He was protecting her money from her. She took a screenshot of the account balance. Then she opened her email and forwarded the image to herself with a timestamp. James watched, his confident facade fracturing further. She told him she was documenting. She smiled at him, though it held no warmth. She deduced he had been planning this for months, moving funds, consulting lawyers, likely already scouting apartments, all while she designed their home addition, prepared their meals, and planned their future. He defended himself, claiming she was always working, that she cared more about her buildings than about him. She summarized his actions, cheating and stealing from their joint accounts. She called it immature. The waiter approached to clear their plates. Emma handed hers over with a genuine smile, thanking him. The waiter, sensing the density of the tension, asked if they would be having dessert. James quickly said no. Emma corrected him. She ordered the chocolate torte and another glass of wine. The waiter nodded and vanished. James stared at her. They were in the middle of terminating their marriage, and she was ordering dessert. She corrected him again. They were in the middle of him confessing an affair and demanding a divorce. She saw no reason to deprive herself of dessert because of his poor choices. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. He admitted he thought she would fight for them. She asked if he had fight for them. When he was with Sophie, was he fighting for their marriage? When he was siphoning their funds, was he thinking about them? He claimed it was different, but he had no explanation for how. Her dessert arrived. The chocolate torte was a masterpiece, rich and decadent with raspberry coulis. She took her time with it, savoring each bite while James squirmed in his seat. He kept checking his phone, likely texting Sophie, informing her that the evening was not proceeding as planned. Finally, he announced he would be staying at a hotel. He said he would come by the following day to retrieve some clothes. Emma refused. He blinked and asked what she meant. She clarified. He would stay at a hotel that night and every night thereafter. She would pack his belongings and have them sent wherever he preferred, but he would not be returning to their house, ever. He argued that it was his house too. Actually, she said, scraping up the last of the chocolate, if he checked the deed, he would see it was in her name. She designed it, she oversaw the construction, she paid for the majority of it with her firm's profits. He had contributed to the furnishings, which she was happy to split fairly, but the structure itself belonged to her. This was clearly information he had neglected to verify. His face drained of color. He insisted that could not be correct. She advised him to check with her lawyer. She finished her wine and stood up, placing her napkin on the table. She thanked him for dinner and for finally being honest. It saved them both time.
She reached for her wallet, but James stopped her. He said quietly that he would pay. The fight had drained from his voice. She thanked him for his generosity. She picked up her purse and told him her lawyer would contact his. She instructed him not to come by the house and not to call her unless it was through legal channels. She walked out of that restaurant with her head high, her steps firm. She made it to her car before the trembling began. She sat in the driver's seat, hands gripping the steering wheel, and allowed herself to feel the full weight of the situation for exactly 3 minutes. The betrayal, the anger, the grief for what she thought they had. Then she wiped her eyes, started the engine, and drove home. Their house in the London suburbs looked beautiful in the evening illumination. She had designed it to catch the sunset perfectly. The large windows she had insisted on glowed with warmth. She had made this place a sanctuary, and James had been planning to take it from her while sleeping with someone else. Not anymore. She unlocked the door and went straight to her office. Her best friend, Hannah Charles, would still be awake. Hannah was a night owl, and more importantly, she was a lawyer. Not a divorce lawyer, but she would know who to call. Hannah answered on the second ring. Emma's voice finally showed strain as she asked for a recommendation. She needed the best divorce attorney available, and she needed an appointment the following morning. Hannah paused, then asked what he had done. Emma sank into her office chair. She told her he had done everything wrong, and he thought he was going to win. Hannah's voice hardened. She noted that James had no idea who he was dealing with. Emma looked around her carefully organized office, at the architectural drawings on her walls, at the evidence of her success and resilience. She agreed. He really didn't. Emma did not sleep that night. Instead, she worked.
Her office became a command center. She pulled every bank statement from the past 2 years, every credit card bill, every receipt she had saved in her meticulous filing system. James had always teased her about her organizational habits. He called her too controlling, too rigid. Now, those habits were going to be her salvation. At 2 in the morning, she found the first hotel charge. 6 months ago, just as he had said, the Riverside Inn, downtown London. She cross-referenced it with her calendar. That was the weekend he claimed to be at a marketing conference in Manchester. She found 3 more hotel charges, all local, all on weekends when he claimed to be traveling. She took screenshots of everything. By 4 in the morning, she had a timeline. The affair had started 6 months ago, but the financial manipulation had begun 3 months ago. Small transfers at first. £200 here, £500 there, then larger amounts. He had been testing to see if she would notice. She hadn't, because she had trusted him. What a miscalculation that had been. The savings account wasn't the only one he had touched. He had also opened a credit card in both their names that she knew nothing about. The bill went to his office email. He had accumulated £12,000 in charges. Jewelry she had never received, weekend trips she had never taken, dinners at restaurants they had never visited together. He had been building a life with Sophie Langley using their money. Emma documented everything. Each charge received a screenshot, a notation, and a date. She created a spreadsheet that was forensic in its detail. By the time dawn broke through her office windows, she had a case file that would bury him. Her phone vibrated. James. She ignored it. It vibrated again and again. 7 calls before 7 in the morning. She turned off the ringer and went to make coffee.
The house felt different now. Every room she walked through, she saw with new eyes. The kitchen, where she had made countless breakfasts while he scrolled through his phone. The living room, where they had watched movies, except lately he had always had an excuse to go to bed early. The bedroom they had shared, where he had come to her less and less frequently over the past months. How had she not seen it? She shook that thought away. This was not her failure. She had been a good wife, a loving partner. She had supported his career, celebrated his wins, comforted him through his losses. She had been present. He was the one who had checked out. He was the one who had betrayed every vow they had made. Her phone vibrated again. This time it was Hannah. She asked if Emma had slept. Emma said she was fine, and she was surprised to realize it was true. She was better than fine. She was prepared. Hannah had called in a favor. Margaret Ellis. She was the best divorce attorney in the city, absolutely ruthless in court, but fair. She did not play games, and she did not lose. She did see Emma at 9 that morning. Emma glanced at the clock. It was 7:30. She would be there. Hannah instructed her to bring everything: bank statements, property deeds, emails, whatever she had. Emma looked at the thick folder sitting on her desk. It was already compiled. Hannah laughed. She said Margaret was going to love her. She was every divorce lawyer's dream client, organized, calm, and wronged enough to have the moral high ground. After they hung up, Emma showered and dressed carefully. She chose a navy suit, a crisp white blouse, minimal jewelry. She looked professional, put together, the kind of woman who does not fall apart, who does not beg, who does not lose. James called again while she was applying her makeup. Then he texted. He said they needed to talk. He begged her to pick up. She deleted it without responding. Another text arrived.
He said she couldn't ignore him forever. She took a screenshot and added it to her file. Then she blocked his number. Margaret Ellis's office was in a high-rise with a view of the Thames that rivaled Emma's best designs. Her receptionist was polite and efficient. Margaret Ellis was in her 50s, perfectly polished with sharp eyes that assessed Emma in seconds. She stood to shake Emma's hand, her grip firm and confident. Margaret mentioned that Hannah spoke highly of her. She asked about Emma's architectural work. Emma confirmed she did mostly high-end residential, but had designed 3 restaurants and an office building. Margaret settled into her chair and asked for the full story. Emma told her about the dinner, James's confession, and the discovery of the financial manipulation. She slid the folder across the desk. Margaret opened it and began flipping through, her expression never changing, but her eyes gaining intensity with each page. She asked if Emma had compiled this herself in one night. Emma admitted she did not sleep well when she was angry. The corner of Margaret's mouth turned upward. She stated that James was an idiot. He had left a trail that a child could follow. The hotel charges, the credit card, the savings transfers, it was all traceable, all documented, and all going to look very bad for him in court. Emma asked if he could claim the house. That was her primary fear. He had said it was his too. Margaret asked to see the deed. Emma had brought it. Margaret examined it carefully. The house was solely in Emma's name, unless James could prove he contributed significantly to its purchase or construction, which, based on the financial records, he hadn't. He had no claim.
The UK courts would look at equitable distribution, but given the circumstances and the clear title predating the marriage, the house was secure. Furthermore, given his affair and financial misconduct, the court would not look favorably on him. Some of the tension in Emma's shoulders eased. She asked about the money he had already moved. Margaret assured her they would get it back, all of it. Plus, they would ensure he was responsible for the credit card debt he racked up on his affair. Margaret closed the folder. She gave Emma a specific instruction. She needed Emma to stay exactly as calm as she was at that dinner. No emotional outbursts, no angry texts, no confrontations. She would handle everything. She explained that men like James expected their wives to crumble. They expected drama, tears, bargaining. When they didn't get that, when the wife stayed strong and silent, it threw them completely off balance. It also made the wife look very good to a judge. Margaret spent the next hour going over strategy. She would file papers by the end of the day. James would be served at his office the following morning. In the meantime, Emma was to change all her passwords, secure her personal accounts, and document any attempts he made to contact her. As Emma was leaving, Margaret suggested she stay somewhere else for a few days. Sometimes men reacted badly when served. She would feel better if Emma wasn't alone in that house. Emma thought about it. Her parents were traveling, but Hannah had a guest room. She agreed. She called Hannah from the parking lot. Hannah told her to come over immediately. They would have wine and discuss James's character flaws. Emma drove back to her house to pack. It felt strange leaving her own home because of James's choices, but Margaret was right. Better to be cautious.
She was folding clothes into a suitcase when she heard a car in the driveway. Through the window, she saw James's sedan. He got out, looking rumpled and tired. He must have been calling from outside after she blocked his number. She watched him try his key in the lock. It didn't work. She had called the locksmith first thing that morning. James tried again, then pounded on the door. He shouted that he knew she was in there. Emma pulled out her phone and started recording. Then she called the police non-emergency line. She stated her name and address. She explained that her estranged husband was attempting to force entry after she had asked him not to come by. She requested an officer. James's face appeared in the window. He looked shocked to see her calmly on the phone. He yelled, asking if she was calling the police on him. She didn't answer, just kept recording. He shouted that it was his house too. The police arrived within 10 minutes. Emma opened the door for them, composed and articulate. She showed them the deed, explained that they were separated, and that James had tried to force entry. The officer told James he needed to leave. James argued it was ridiculous, claiming she was his life. The officer stood firm. It was her property. If he didn't leave, he would be arrested for trespassing. James looked at Emma, his expression a mix of disbelief and fury. He told her she was going to regret this. Emma asked the officer if she could add that threat to her report. James's face reddened, but he walked back to his car. The officers waited until he drove away. One advised her to consider a restraining order if he returned. Emma confirmed her lawyer was already working on it. After they left, she finished packing and locked up the house. She set the security system and activated the cameras she had installed 2 years ago. James didn't know about those cameras. They would record everything if he came back.
Hannah's flat was in a converted warehouse in East London, all exposed brick and high ceilings. She had made dinner and poured a large glass of wine. Emma recounted the entire 24 hours. By the time she finished, Hannah was furious. She admitted she never liked him, thinking he was too entitled, but had kept quiet because Emma seemed happy. Emma asked if she had been happy, or just comfortable. Hannah told her not to do that, not to make his cheating about her happiness. He could have talked to her. He could have suggested counseling. He could have been honest. Instead, he lied, cheated, and stole. That was on him. Emma knew she was right, but some small part of her still wondered what she could have done differently. Her phone vibrated, an unknown number. She answered cautiously. It was Sophie Langley, the mistress. Emma gestured frantically at Hannah and put the phone on speaker. She asked what Sophie wanted, her voice cold. Sophie said she just wanted Emma to know that she and James were serious. They loved each other, and she thought Emma should make this divorce easy for everyone. Hannah looked ready to strangle the phone. Emma spoke calmly. She told Sophie she was welcome to him, truly. But if Sophie thought Emma was going to make anything easy after what they both did, she was as delusional as James. She told her not to call again. She hung up and blocked that number too. Hannah marveled at the audacity. Emma said they would both learn. That night, Emma slept for 4 hours. It was the best sleep she had managed in months. The process server caught James in the parking lot of his office at 8:30 the next morning. Emma knew because Margaret's office sent a confirmation with a timestamp. There was a certain satisfaction in knowing he had been served publicly in front of his colleagues. Emma's phone stayed blissfully silent. James was blocked.
And Sophie was also blocked. She changed all her passwords, secured her accounts, and forwarded all her mail to Hannah's address. She was unreachable, and it was perfect. Margaret called at 10. James had contacted a lawyer. They wanted to meet. Apparently, James was very upset about the terms. Emma asked what terms, since they hadn't negotiated anything yet. Margaret explained that James seemed to think this was going to be a friendly, quick divorce where they both walked away happy. His lawyer had to explain that his client's affair and financial misconduct meant this would not be friendly. Margaret asked if Emma was sure she didn't want mediation. Emma was sure. He killed the marriage the moment he touched Sophie. There was nothing left to save. Margaret agreed to proceed with litigation. It would take longer and cost more, but they would win bigger. Emma focused on work. She had a presentation to finalize for a potential client, a couple wanting to build their dream home on the coast near Brighton. She lost herself in the design, in the clean lines and natural light. Architecture had always been her escape, creating something beautiful from nothing but an idea. Hannah was at work, so Emma had the flat to herself. She had just finished her presentation mock-up when her work phone rang. It was Margaret Doyle, her secretary. There was a woman there to see her. She said it was urgent. Her name was Sophie Langley. The sheer boldness left Emma speechless for a moment. She told Doyle to say she was unavailable. Sophie claimed she would wait. Emma hung up and immediately called Margaret Ellis. Margaret advised her not to engage. If Sophie wouldn't leave, call building security. They would document it as harassment. Emma called Doyle back and instructed her to contact security.
10 minutes later, Doyle called again. Sophie was gone, but she had been crying. She said she just wanted to apologize.
Emma told Doyle to note the time and what was said. She should have felt pity. Instead, she felt nothing. Sophie was a problem, like a structural issue in a building. You don't get emotional about a fractured foundation. You just fix it. That afternoon, she met with the Brighton clients. The presentation went perfectly. They signed a contract on the spot. It was a 6-month project worth a significant sum. She called Hannah with the news. Hannah insisted on celebratory drinks. They went to a wine bar in the city. Emma was finally feeling some tension leave her body when she saw them. James and Sophie were at a table in the corner. He was leaning close to her, holding her hand. She was dabbing at her eyes. Neither of them had seen Emma yet. Hannah suggested leaving. Emma refused. She was not running. She was not hiding. She had every right to be there. They stayed. Emma kept her back to their table, refusing to give them the satisfaction of her attention, but she was aware of them. They left before Emma and Hannah did. As they passed, Sophie tried to make eye contact. Emma looked right through her, like she was invisible. The hurt on Sophie's face was evident, but Emma felt nothing. Hannah called it brutal and perfect. Sophie wanted acknowledgement. She wanted a scene. Emma refused to give her that. But later that night, alone in the guest room, Emma let herself feel it. The pain of seeing them together. The reality that her husband had chosen someone else. She cried for exactly 15 minutes. Then she washed her face and went to sleep. The next morning brought an email from Margaret. James's lawyer had sent over a proposed division of assets. He wanted half the value of the house, half her retirement, half her business, and he wanted her to pay his legal fees. Emma forwarded it to Margaret with one question. Is he joking?
Margaret called immediately. It was an aggressive starting position, a negotiation tactic. They would counter with their own proposal, which would be very different. Emma built her business before the marriage. He had no claim, and they would be asking for compensation for the stolen money and the debt. They spent the afternoon working on the counterproposal. By the time they finished, it was clear James would walk away with far less than he hoped. His retirement account, his car, his personal belongings. The house was hers. The business was hers. He would be responsible for the debt. Margaret warned he wouldn't agree. They would end up in court. Emma said simply, "Then we go to court." That evening, Emma drove back to her house to pick up files. The place felt empty, echoing. She was loading files into her car when a silver SUV pulled up. Sophie got out. She begged Emma not to call the police. She just wanted to talk. Emma closed her trunk and said there was nothing to talk about. Sophie moved closer. She said she knew Emma hated her, but she needed her to understand. It wasn't just an affair. They had a real connection. Emma looked at her properly. Sophie was young, pretty in a generic way, trying hard to look sophisticated but appearing desperate. Emma spoke calmly. She told Sophie she didn't hate her. She didn't feel anything about her at all. Sophie was just a person who made bad choices, same as James. But she offered a warning. If he cheated with her, he would cheat on her. If he lied to Emma, he would lie to Sophie. Sophie thought she had won a prize, but all she got was a cheater and a liar who was about to lose most of his assets. Sophie's face crumpled. She called Emma bitter. Emma got into her car. She said she was realistic. There was a difference. She drove away, leaving Sophie standing in the driveway.
Back at Hannah's, they ate pizza and watched comedy. Emma forgot about the mess for a few hours. A late email from Margaret arrived. James's lawyer claimed Emma threatened Sophie. Emma denied it immediately. Margaret knew. She had told his lawyer about the security cameras. He backed down immediately. They were reaching. They were losing. Emma sent the footage to Margaret. James was getting desperate. Sophie was getting clingy. Emma was getting stronger. Discovery began 2 weeks later. Margaret's team subpoenaed everything. James's company emails were gold. He had been emailing Sophie from his work account. Personal messages, inappropriate messages, evidence of using company resources for the affair. Margaret noted that once submitted, this became public record. HR would find out. James could lose his job. Emma didn't hesitate. He chose to do this. He could live with the consequences. 2 days later, Margaret called. James's company had found out. Someone in legal saw the discovery documents. James was placed on administrative leave. He would likely be terminated for violating strict fraternization policies. Sophie worked directly under him.
Emma felt a grim satisfaction. James had thought he could have everything. Instead, he was losing all of it. Sophie called the office 3 times that day. Emma ignored her. Then Eleanor Whitmore, James's mother, showed up at Emma's office. She looked older, strained. She asked Emma to reconsider. She said James was sorry, that he was lost. Emma countered that he was lost because his choices cost him everything. Eleanor brought up their vows. Emma pointed out that James broke those vows first. Eleanor claimed Emma was ruining him, costing him his job. Emma leaned forward. She reminded Eleanor that she didn't sleep with James's assistant. She didn't violate company policy. She didn't steal. He did. The consequences were his. Eleanor left, accusing Emma of changing. Emma agreed. She had changed. She was no longer the accommodating woman who kept the peace at her own expense. The following week, the judge granted temporary orders. Emma got sole access to the house and business. James was ordered to pay toward the credit card debt. He was furious. Emma's business was thriving. The Brighton project was ahead of schedule. James's world was contracting. He was terminated from his job. Sophie was given a warning and transferred. James moved in with his parents. No one wanted to hire a manager fired for an affair with a subordinate. One evening, leaving her office late, Emma found James waiting in the parking lot. He looked terrible, unshaven, rumpled. He begged for 5 minutes. She gave him 5 minutes. He accused her of destroying his life. She corrected him. He destroyed his own life. She was just refusing to be destroyed with it. He claimed Sophie had left him. She couldn't be with someone who wasn't stable. He said he missed Emma. He missed us. He wanted to reconcile. Emma stared at him. She told him there was no us. He killed that. He claimed he loved her. She told him he loved what she provided, the comfortable life, the successful wife, but he never loved her. She walked to her car and left him standing there. The Brighton project consumed her days. That was where she met Oliver Grant. He was the lead contractor, a man in his early 40s with an easy smile and careful hands. He had been building custom homes for 20 years. He complimented her designs. He said she made art. They fell into an easy working relationship. He was professional, skilled, and kind. One morning, sitting on the foundation wall looking out at the coast, he mentioned he heard she was going through a divorce. He shared that he had been through one 5 years ago. His wife had died of cancer, and then her sister sued him for half of what they owned. It nearly broke him. Emma was surprised. He seemed so steady. He told her that surviving something terrible shows you what you were made of. They bonded over that. 2 people rebuilding after loss. Oliver invited her to his daughter's graduation party. Isla Grant was heading to university to study engineering. The party was modest, full of love. It felt good to be somewhere normal. The following Monday, James showed up at the construction site. Oliver noticed immediately. He offered to handle it. Emma walked over to James. She told him to leave. He pleaded with her. He said he was trying to fix things. She told him there was nothing to fix. Oliver approached, his presence solid. He asked if he needed to call site security. James asked who he was. Oliver didn't answer. He just stood there. James accused Emma of moving on fast. She told him she moved on the moment he confessed. James left, but not before warning her she would regret this. Emma filed for a restraining order. It was granted within a week. Sophie showed up at the site a few days later. She was a mess. She said James was suicidal. Emma told her to call emergency services if that was true, but not to use it to manipulate her. Sophie called her cold. Emma called it having boundaries. James's lawyer withdrew from the case because James hadn't paid his bills. He was representing himself. Margaret warned Emma that this would be unpredictable. The court date arrived. The courthouse was cold and impersonal. James looked awful. He represented himself, and it was a disaster. Margaret laid out the facts: the affair, the theft, the debt. James tried to argue fairness. He admitted to the affair and the money transfer under questioning. Judge Hale was not impressed. She asked what he contributed that entitled him to half of what Emma built before the marriage. He had no answer.
The judgment was swift. The house was Emma's. Her business was hers. Joint assets divided 50-50. James had to reimburse the stolen savings and pay the debt, and her legal fees. It was over in 45 minutes.
Emma walked out into the bright sunlight. She was free. She drove to the Brighton house. The clients had moved in, but she visited to see the finished work. Oliver was there. She told him she won. He smiled and said he never doubted it. They stood on the deck watching the sea. Emma received a text from James. He was bitter. She blocked the number. Oliver asked what happened next. She said she moved forward. That evening, she returned to her house. It felt lighter. It was fully hers. 6 months later, her life had transformed. Her firm had grown. She had redecorated the house, erasing James's influence. She and Oliver were seeing each other regularly. It wasn't rushed. It was a friendship that had deepened into something more. She had started architectural photography as a hobby. Her friend, Laura Finch, a gallery owner, encouraged it. One Saturday, Emma attended an opening at Laura's gallery. 3 of her photos were displayed. Raphael Brooks, the contractor who had introduced her to Oliver, was there. He brought a new client. Then she saw Oliver. He had cleaned up nicely. They looked at her photo of the Brighton house together. He told her it was his favorite project because he really understood her vision. He mentioned that Isla asked about her. She wanted to know if they were dating. Emma asked what he said. He said he told them they were friends, but if circumstances were different, he would be interested. Later, walking to her car, Oliver asked her to dinner, a real date, not about work. She agreed. 1 year after the divorce, Emma had her own solo show at the gallery, Spaces of Transformation, photos of homes she designed for people starting over.
The gallery was full. Oliver was there with Isla, Raphael was there. A stranger approached Emma, a woman going through a divorce. She said Emma's work gave her hope. Emma told her she would survive. She would build something better. Near the end of the night, Emma received a text from an unknown number. James. He had seen the article about the show. He congratulated her. She felt nothing but fatigue. She replied once, "Thank you. Goodbye." Then she blocked him. Rebecca, Hannah, toasted to her. She said she was impressed Emma didn't fall apart. Emma said she had help. Oliver drove her home. They sat in the driveway. He told her she didn't just survive. She took something hard and turned it into something beautiful. He was right. She invited him in for coffee. Emma Calder walked through her house, her sanctuary. She looked at the plans on her desk for a new project, a home for a young couple. She thought about James, living whatever life he had chosen. And she thought about herself, standing here, whole and strong. He had wanted to break her. Instead, he had set her free. She turned away from the window and walked toward her future. Do you think she should have said everything out loud? Let hear you in the comments. See you on the next story.